Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to a deep dive looking at the source material for the book Killers Upon Hull, a tale of secrets, love, and murder in the 1890s. Our mission, really, is to explore how this story paints 1890s Hull, but also how it contrasts this idea of an artistic killer with the, well, brutal pragmatism of our main character, Stephen House. And we really need to dig into that dizzying moral line he crosses, supposedly in the name of justice.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it's not just recounting a plot, is it? We're
Mhm.
using these sources to talk about morality, about vigilante justice, all set against this incredibly vivid historical backdrop. The book immediately makes you question who the real villain is here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think to really get that conflict inside Stephen House, we have to start with the place itself. Kingston upon Hull in the 1890s, it feels like more than just a setting.
Oh, totally. It's practically a character in its own right.
So what details really ground us there right away?
Well, the narrative just throws you in. It describes the city as bustling, loud with the hum of trade, but underneath it all, it's deeply grimy, often violent. It's explicitly called out as being known for fish fighting ale, blood, and crime.
Fish fighting ale, blood, and crime. Doesn't leave much to the imagination, does it?
Not really. And the sensory stuff is sharp. You get this immediate contrast between classes, immaculate top hats on some gentlemen, almost mirror-like.
Right.
And then near the docks, the hats get ever increasingly tattered. And Stephen himself wears this tattered off-white vest. The divide is stark.
And Stephen's own living situation sounds pretty grim.
Oh, it is. His place has these damp walls that smelled of wood left out in the rain. The air's stale, heavy. There's this constant reminder of the unpleasant realities, like him having to empty his slop bucket out the window. It's not romanticized Victoriana, it's just bleak.
Yeah, it feels like an environment designed to crush you, or at least make you rely on something to cope.
Exactly. Alcohol features heavily for Stephen, and even places of authority aren't immune. The police station might have high ceilings and heavy wood, but it also has that distinct smell of cigarette smoke and scotch.
So, vice is just baked into the fabric of the city, even the system meant to control it.
Pretty much. You mentioned the local color, too, like the Waterloo Tavern with its darkened wood and murky green paint, giving it a gloomy, dank feel. And those dung-strewn streets, it paints a picture.
It really does. And this is the world that Stephen Howes operates in. He's introduced as a private investigator, but that's not the whole story, is it?
Not by a long shot. He's hired by a guy named Craven Wilkinson, and the job is very specific to dispatch a specific murderer.
Hmm.
The text is clear. He's paid handsomely for it. And his particular talents, they include the ability to cross lines if the price is right.
Okay, so right there, the premise is set. He's not just investigating, he's been hired to kill someone.
Mm-hmm.
And this sets up the core conflict, this dueling philosophy of violence. On one hand, we have Stephen, the hired gun. On the other, the artistic killer. Let's talk about his perspective first. How does the book frame his view of murder as art?
Well, this killer operates with this immense sense of self-importance. Ego, really. He is absolutely convinced he's a genius, comparing his crimes to cultural masterpieces. He actually says, I myself am not a genius, but when the stage has been laid and the actors all in place, then I make murder my piano sonata.
A piano sonata. Wow. That's elevating brutality to performance art.
Completely. He views his victims as, quote, six works of art. There's this chilling detachment, like when he dismisses an unborn child because it had no knowledge or appreciation of the depth of my chores.
Chores. He calls murder chores.
Yeah, it's all about the performance for him. He even describes a killing in a theater, timing it perfectly with Beethoven's symphony, feeling the wave of an audience's appreciation, performing his final solo.
The performance is everything. Okay, so now let's contrast that with Stephen Howes, the man supposedly hunting him. He's playing detective, but we know he's a killer himself. What's going on inside his head?
Stephen is described as a man at odds with himself. He looks handsome, but worn. There's the heavy drinking, often to oblivion, just to cope. And there's this resentment. He feels like he's pretending, frustrated he wasn't born to the easier life he's mimicking.
But he's good at his job, right?
Yeah.
The detective part, at least.
Yes. When he's at a crime scene, his focus is intense. The text says it's the only thing that saved him or made him anything that resembled a good detective. But the real insight comes from his nightmares. He's always falling, past ledges with people's faces, all chalk.
Chalk faces on ledges. What do those represent?
The sources say these are the faces of people who morally deserve to burn.
So even before this case, his actions, his violence, It's tied to this personal, twisted sense of justice.
Exactly. The chalk faces are the voids he feels compelled to fill. He believes he has more work to complete. It explains why he feels justified acting as judge, jury, and executioner. It's not just a job, it's a calling, in a dark way.
And this is why, as you read it, you find yourself kind of rooting for him, despite knowing he's a killer.
That's the crux of it. The narrative positions his actions, even murder, in a way that feels almost sympathetic. For Stephen, murder was a word that implied wrongdoing, but he kills because he believes it's what every moralistic human being would have done had they been so inclined.
So the line between the detective and the criminal just vanishes.
It becomes invisible. His violence is brutal, yes, but it feels purposeful, in contrast to the artistic killer's perceived randomness.
Let's get specific then.
Yeah.
Talk about those moments where Stephen enacts his own justice. Because these aren't arrests. The first one involves an extortionist, the Peacock.
Right. Stephen sees this guy, the Peacock, threatening a shop owner over a debt. He doesn't call the police. He jumps in. It's a nasty fight. Stephen breaks the guy's arm, smashes his knee into his face. It's pure street justice. Very direct.
But then he goes further, right? He doesn't just stop the threat.
No. After beating the Peacock, Stephen takes a hefty wedge of the money the guy had collected right out of his pocket.
Steals it.
Steals it, yeah. And gives it back to the shop owner he was defending. So it's an assault and robbery, technically, but the framing makes you feel like, okay, the victim got restitution, the bully got punished. It feels right somehow in that context.
And this immediately leads into the system failing, which underscores why Stephen acts this way. What happens to the Peacock?
He's released almost immediately. The sources mention this powerful figure, Victor Surin, a Dutch businessman who has Hull wrapped up in a criminal web. His influence gets the Peacock out.
So the official system is corrupt and ineffective. Which just makes Stephen's brutal methods seem like the only ones that actually work.
It's the justification, exactly. Why bother with the law if it's broken? And that sets the stage for the most disturbing example of Stephen's code. Martin Slick.
The man who killed his own child.
Yes. Stephen finds him hiding out in an alley. Again, no police called.
He confronts him alone.
He does. He uses a club first, gets control of the situation. Then he executes him. With his bare hands, pressing his fingertips into Martin's windpipe until he stops breathing. It's described as very deliberate, very personal.
And the last thing he says to him. It's chilling, but it also seals our empathy, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. He says, "This, you piece of filth, is what your daughter would have felt like."
He's acting as the avenger. Making the punishment fit the crime in the most visceral way possible.
And because we've just seen the system fail with the Peacock, you, the reader, are almost forced to accept this as the only real justice available in this world. It's immediate, it's consequential, unlike the artistic killer's detachment.
So while he's doing this, he's also supposed to be hunting the other killer, the artistic one. How does that pursuit unfold? It gets complicated, right?
Very complicated. The artistic killer, the AK, as we might call him, is smart. He knows he's being hunted, and he seems to know who is hunting him. It stops being just a cat-and-mouse game based on clues. The AK starts communicating directly. He sends a letter addressed pointedly to Dear Detective House.
Using quote marks around detective. Ouch. He knows Stephen's a fake.
Precisely. He's calling him out. And he admits he orchestrated a recent murder specifically to lure you out. Stephen is now part of the performance.
So the killer is actively drawing Stephen into his game.
Yes, and taunting him. The AK mentions observing Stephen, even complimenting his skills, suggesting Stephen could have been one of his masterpieces. But then he twists it, saying Stephen is now just playing a role destined to be merely a witness to my greatness.
He's trying to control the narrative, make Stephen just another character on his stage. Which brings up this really critical question, doesn't it? Stephen was hired to kill someone. Now he has this perfect target, a monstrous theatrical killer that everyone would want stopped. Is the artistic killer just providing Stephen with the ultimate justification, the perfect cover story for the violence he was already inclined towards? The violence he was paid to commit.
That's the implication, isn't it? Stephen is chasing this elaborate villain, this artist, while simultaneously carrying out his own, let's say, morally justifiable executions on the side. The sources paint this picture where Stephen Howes, the hired killer, become the only effective moral agent in a city drowning in corruption and artistic psychopathy.
So we end up in this place where the narrative suggests that maybe, Just maybe, in a world this broken, abandoning the law and acting as a vigilante murderer is the only way to find any kind of justice.
It definitely leaves you questioning. If Stephen's core drive is dealing with those chalk faces, the people who morally deserve to burn, does the hunt for the artistic killer just become the perfect excuse? Does it allow him to fulfill that grim destiny under the cover of a case?
It seems the real deep dive here isn't just about who the killer is, but about our own willingness as readers to forgive, even support a protagonist who throws the rule book out the window because his personal code feels more right than the failing system around him. Think about this. Stephen never intended to arrest his target. He was paid to kill him. Is the artistic killer just the universe handing Stephen the perfect, publicly acceptable reason to do what he was going to do anyway? Something to ponder.